Great. Great, Debs. Let me share my screen. Okay, so really interesting situation that came about today or last week. We were training on AI governance, and one of the aspects that we focused on was moving from what we refer to as data quality to total quality. Okay, and I don't know how many of you have seen some of my previous presentations, but what we are trying to say is AI is so dependent on quality of data, quality of records, structured, unstructured data, and quality of things like the security and the cybersecurity. And so AI really battles to bring everything together, but certainly needs to bring everything together. So if we give it bad data, if we give it bad documents, then it's not going to stand a chance. So it's almost right down at the bottom end, and it battles with those type of issues. And we've heard of lots of comments about the data scientist being the new data garbage man, and they spend 70% of the time cleaning the data. Now, why is that? Why are they cleaning the data? Why aren't they depending on data governance to deal with these issues and provide them with proper data? Is it because they don't really want to wait for data governance? Is it because they feel they can just go to the data lake and start looking at the data? I think there's all sorts of different reasons, and need to come together and start to collaborate and help the AI people succeed. The success is not very good at the moment. Of course, we had some discussions with Ronald in the last couple of weeks about the medallion structure and ensuring that we get quality at the right level at the right time, then ensuring that the model has the appropriate data. But what I think is important, and I find quality to be very hard in that it's fit for the consumer, it's fit for purpose, and it's dependent on the needs of the model that's working through. So when we develop these models, we can be dependent on all sorts of different things, and we need to ensure that the data that's arriving is of the right quality. And if it's not, we actually need an early warning system to be able to say we're not getting the right quality, or the data is drifting. So the shape of the data that was used to train the models has changed, and we should not expect all sorts of fancy success metrics on that point in time. Okay. Now, what I quickly realized is I spent lots of time on the quality management, and then it's about, okay, that's great, but data quality or quality, total quality without the North Star metric and without the business metric, that's also tricky, because if any of you have built data strategies, what you're wanting to do, certainly like on my side, is any use case should have a commercial feasibility, and of course a technical feasibility. Can we actually deliver this thing? And I always like Shane's information product canvas. Why are we doing this? What's the reason? And of course, where we can link it to a business metric, a business value, that's when we really start to get the business excited about this effort that they're going to have to put a lot of people on it to make it work. Okay, so I always like to tell the story like this: is if you go to the executive or the business person and saying, we want to use this fancy LLM ChatGPT technology, and we believe we can get into conversational AI, you probably find after a few minutes the guy maybe starting to look at his phone, starting to wonder why he had this meeting. But if you change that around and go back to the business person and say, I understand that you and your department, to contribute to the North Star or to the OKR, you need to be doing this. You need to be improving this indicator. And there's this concept of leading and lagging indicators. But if you can have a discussion with them about saying, how do I take you? How do I give you a 5% improvement on this? What is it going to do for you? Is it going to increase your bonus? Now, that discussion is a whole lot better than accuracy, relevance, clarity, all of those type of things that we're talking about. That's how we connect to our business. And I started a data quality course today, and I have 8 people on the course, and many of them are saying, how do I set up a business case for data quality? Okay. And my first comment was, well, you don't talk about the dimensions of data quality. You have to start understanding what's the friction of the data quality, what are the indicators and the metrics that they are being measured on, and how can you improve it? If we can just improve this, and this, then I believe you'll get a 20% increase. And if we can continue to improve that, we'll get more and more and more. So many of the people that are setting up data quality programs or running data quality programs, it's about how do we get the right improvement. Now, Rob, I know we had some discussions earlier on to recognize that all of this work that we're doing is not just about technology and data management and things like that. It also has to deal with the people or the social side of it. And I'm not going to be tackling that, but I'm hoping to bring someone along by the name of Guy Martin that focuses a lot on all of this business performance and the people side of it, and how do we get them into this scenario. So if he does join, maybe I'll ask him to share some perceptions that he has and some challenges that he faces. Okay, so hopefully I've set the scene appropriately for you. I want to be able to, whatever I do, AI, data quality, metadata, what is the business metric that I'm having an impact on? What can we talk about? How can I talk business to the business people and not data, and not constantly ask them to become more data fluent, more data literate, more data, whatever it is. And I constantly share this message that I was talking to one executive about data literacy, and he said, Howard, I'm pretty tired of these data literacy discussions. My challenge to you is when you can talk business to me and you can talk finance to the CFO, then we'll start talking data to you. So you come and start talking business to me, and I'll start talking data to you. And I get it. I like his way of thinking about it. And I think as data people, we need to learn how to communicate that. And then we won't have so many questions of how do I build a business case? How do I do that? Rob, I'm sure you've done this on many occasions. I know I've worked with you at Standard Bank. I know you are very successful at bringing technology initiatives into the bank. Is that something that you had to learn pretty quickly, or did everyone just love IBM so much that you didn't have to talk business?
I think my motto says it all. My motto was think customer.
Right.
So IBM's motto, as you know, was always think, but you
Yes.
got to think customer. So we in our small little software development company, we insisted that when we dealt with customers, when we had sessions with them, we would use their language as far as we could. And if
Right.
we couldn't use their language, we would be at pains to explain what we meant by the technical terms we use.
Right. Right. Okay, great. And one of the things I find is when we're trying to work out whether we can help this customer and be of value to the customer, it's about what is going to drive the needle. I know Paul Bolton talks about that a lot. What makes the change? What makes the difference? Okay, so this is what I'd like to start off with. Okay, so total quality management, and if you've heard me raving on the last few weeks, it's all about let's stop calling it data quality, let's start calling it total quality, because we need to deal with all aspects. Without the strategy, it lacks direction. So I can build these fancy dimensions on accuracy and completeness and reasonableness, and we can have all sorts of exciting debates with going from the dimension to the concept and this rule and this metric and this improvement, and it's really important. But if I can't connect it to what the impact is going to be, or if I can't prioritize it, then we're having lots of interesting discussions, but we're not going anywhere. So the common problem, organizations launch quality improvement programs, but struggle to demonstrate business impact. Six Sigma, lean initiatives, process improvements. Why does this happen? Well, we lack prioritization. We lack, or we deal with disconnected metrics. So my reasonableness, validity, completeness, how does it connect to their business metric? Okay. And yes, they know they need to improve it, but they do all these things and then they still don't see the improvement, and because we're not measuring appropriately. And then there's this concept of local optimization, that each department needs to bring its side to improving it. So a department optimizes its processes. Sometimes the process goes across multiple departments, but a lot of times we focus on the internal department and improving that. So we improve our process, but then we create bottlenecks elsewhere. And if any of you have done those things where you take a cross-functional business process and you say to Department A, and I'll share a story of a health wealth company. This was a pension fund company, and they had to take on pension funds. They had to convert places like IBM from one pension fund to another pension fund. And when I looked at some of the data on the data quality, I looked at the ID number. I thought that was a good place to start, but when I saw it, I got something like a 60% duplication on the ID number. And when I drilled down a little bit further on, there was something like 40% of those ID numbers was the same ID number. And when I kept on asking more questions, that belonged to a lady in the pension department, the onboarding department. And I jumped to the conclusion that this had something to do with potential fraud. And I went and had a quiet chat with the executive, and he started laughing. And he said, Howard, you probably don't understand this business. Well, he didn't use the word probably, but he said, you don't understand the pressure we're under. And if we cannot get all of the IBM people onto the pension fund at this time within this month-end cutoff, well, we can't send the invoice out, and therefore we lose a whole lot of money. So when I'm onboarding an organization that has 10,000 people, and I have so many people that don't have an ID number, I find ways of completing that ID number. And of course, the real problem is the fact that they are forced to enter ID numbers. It would be better if they didn't have to, but that was his problem. And I said, okay, but what about downstream in terms of then when it comes to payout time, or when it comes to whatever it is time, surely the ID number is a critical data element, and now you've got a problem. And he said, yes, you are right in terms of that situation, but it's not my problem. Okay. And as Veronica pointed out, they were checking valid ID numbers. So I couldn't add a rubbish ID number, and then I could easily check, well, all the rubbish ID numbers are ones that we forced in, so we had to give a valid ID number. And then it's a challenge of understanding what was bad input and what was nefarious input and what was good input. Yeah. So also we have executive skepticism. Leadership sees TQM as operational busy work. We're keeping the ops people very busy rather than strategic value. Okay. Consequence, TQM becomes a compliance exercise, or in some cases fades away. Now, I am seeing where a lot of the times the total quality is important and does show big benefits up front and can keep on going. But we can also have a situation where most of the banks on BCBS, they have to show the quality, and that means they have to do it, but Does it mean they get any value out of it? That's a typical one. Okay, so how do we fix it? My belief is I need to connect a driver tree to my total quality efforts. And when we talk total quality, we are talking in the context of this business metric. It gives us lovely context and not just we can talk about anything. Okay, so that's the challenge we face, and we need to be able to address it. Okay, so how does this driver come along? And we can see here that we've got an overarching metric, which is typically known as the North Star, the KPI, and then we go from the what we're measuring to the why, and we're drilling down on the different levels. Different levels tend to be North Star at the top. We all know Spotify's North Star. That's called listening hours. Okay. And then HR have to be able to justify, well, how do I impact North Star or listening hours? And every department has to say how they impact North Star. And they would come down to these categories, strategic themes, customer experience, operational efficiency, price, and value. So each department will probably focus on a different category. And then within the category, there are levers that influence the outcomes. So let's say we've got customer experience. Now, first contact resolution is great for good customer experience. So when they contact us in the first time and we resolve their claim quickly and fast, then it's a sold. It's a deal that they would probably renew their policy. So if we write on the top, if we have policy retention rate, okay, that's the number of policies that are being renewed, and we get good customer experience with first contact and straight through processing and customer and claim settlement time, we're going to keep those people. Of course, there'll be some pricing issues and that, but we're doing a good job in servicing them. And then we've got what we call the leading indicators, which are the actions. These are actions that we can take that help us predict the business metrics. So these are the leading indicators. Those tend to be the lagging indicators. And we need to be so careful on these leading indicators. And I'm going to give you an example a little bit further down in terms of how do management talk to us when they see the month-end dashboard or they see the month-end figures and they want to say, okay, this is what we've got to do. If they're trying to drive action through a lagging indicator, it's not easy. It's very hard. If they drive it through a leading indicator or measurable activities, people can relate to this is what I need to do. And it comes to that level. So what can I do about it? And connects downward to specific actions. Okay. All right, so driver trees resolve this strategy to execution gap. So we've got a strategy and we now need to execute. So if I'm getting to a leading indicator that tells me what I need to do faster, smarter, whatever it is, I'm connecting to the strategy. Okay. And we're seeing this this causal clarity, not casual clarity, but causal, cause versus via or correlation. Which one are we dealing with? Okay. Actionability at each level, they all roll up. Alignment without ambiguity.
Testing
So,
1, 2, 3, test.
sorry, I'm just going to switch. Okay. All right. Alignment without ambiguity. So all of our OKRs or our objective key results. Remember, many years ago, we used to use balanced scorecards. People have moved away from it because it just took so much time. I still find it's a helpful thinking tool in terms of getting the structure right, but it just takes too long. And so they've now come to objective key results within a specific time. So I need to increase this rate by this time in this quarter. That's what your OKR is, simple statements. Okay. All right. So real world example, insurance company wants to increase the policy retention rate from 88% to 90%. Just 2% makes a massive difference. So without a driver tree, marketing will go and launch a loyalty campaign. Okay. Claims may focus on faster settlements. IT may build a new mobile app. There's no coordination between the two. Okay. Whereas with a driver tree, we go policy retention is on in North Star. Then we go down to the different categories: customer experience, operational, and price. Under operational, we use claim STP, straight through processing. And then under claim STP, we can use percentage of first notice of loss via the digital platform. So how many people are coming via automation? What is our backlog? And what is the first contact time? Yes, Paul.
Sorry, man. If you don't mind finishing the slide, and then just if you wouldn't mind repeating the lever and leading and the levers again. That's the lagging and leading indicator. How you use that to flip the question. I just was a bit fast. I missed something there, and I'm stuck on my end.
Okay, so you get these sort of roll-ups of your indicators. That and if I go back to that slide, I think you were talking about is this one here.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we start off. Let's all agree we start off with a North Star metric.
Yes.
Policy retention rate. Okay, that's the number of renewals. Okay, customer lifetime value is a bit hard because once they cancel their policies, they're gone.
Yes.
So renewal policy retention is a bit better because we know at the end of each year when we go for a price increase or whatever it is, if they renew the policy, bonus. So that's a better North Star metric. So we've got this one at the top. And then I'm sitting down in the marketing department or in the F&OL department, which is the claim. The claim comes to me. And now I ask myself the question, well, how do I impact policy retention?
Yeah.
Okay. So I need to move up to this scenario of first contact resolution or SDP rate. So I'm part of F&OL. I affect first contact. So the first time you see me, if I know that this is your very first claim, okay, then I'm desperate to make sure I can resolve this for you as well and as efficient as possible.
Got you.
Okay, then we go up to operational efficiency or customer experience. Depends on, and so you probably find first contact is customer experience, whereas STP rate, straight through processing, is operational efficiency. So every metric rolls up.
Yes. Okay.
And then we get from there to the North Star metric. Okay. Did that answer your question, Paul?
It helps, but you talked about the leading and lagging indicator.
Okay.
And if the board is talking this way, then you want to always bring it to what you can do.
Yes. So I cannot, if let's say we stop at the business metrics, they tend to be lagging indicators, right? Straight through processing rate.
Yeah.
All right. That takes me a while to change that number. So it could take me a month before that number has been affected.
Because you're waiting to see what happened. Yes. Okay.
Yes. Now, if I bring it down to what can I do in terms of tomorrow or the next customer, average first contact time, if I can reduce or improve that average first contact time, that means that's something I can have direct impact on.
Okay.
I can't have a direct impact on those higher level lagging indicators. We need many people to affect that, but I can do my job on that one.
Okay, so just connecting it to that, what happened, why did it happen, and what's going to happen, and then what do I do?
What can I do about it? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That also thing that you asked in terms of what's happening, why is it happening?
Yeah.
When will it happen? What should I do?
All right, cool, man. Thanks. Sorry,
no problem.
Missed something you said. Thanks, and just had that help. Thank you.
Yes, Rob.
Howard, sorry, you're not going to get off the slide by the looks of things.
No problem.
It is so very important, and I think one of the factors to this is the interlevel communication as well. So for people to know what other people are doing, the process that I think is what's demanded by this diagram, the process needs to be an inclusive process.
Yes. And so you're certainly having to look at all of the different departments. Now, I'd like to pick up on Shane's comment of saying the metric tree seems to be a reincarnation of balanced scorecard. But what you would find, Shane, is you've got those different levels. So the bottom one tends to be the skills of the individual. Then it goes to business process efficiency. Then it goes to finance, and then it goes to customer, their role. And sometimes you can change them around in that order. Now, what we're doing here is we're not getting involved in the mapping between the business process and then the finance and then the whatever it is. It's the departments define their tree according to how they affect their measure that rolls up on that hierarchy. So we're not almost jumping across different domains or concepts. Does that make sense, Shane?
Yeah, I think they've taken some of the, like you said, some of the things that used to take too long with that centralized model that balanced scorecard kind of enforced, and created a more decentralized version of it that took away some of those, processes that took ages, but
Yes.
still deliver the value. So yeah, I don't have a problem that it is a reincarnation, because I think it's a good iteration, and it's good to see it coming back into organizations.
Right. And Shane, I love what you're saying, because one of the things I liked about balanced scorecard is I learned a lot about the business, the processes. I learned how things connected, and it was a good way for me to understand how to connect the dots. But the ongoing maintenance became problematic in terms of we every year we'd have to go through this process, and it would be a challenge. Okay. Rob, I don't know if I answered your question, or do you have another one?
I really have a question. I just was
You left your hand.
I was just pontificating a bit
Okay.
about
Heinrich?
about the importance of inclusivity.
Oh yes. That thing of it's actually quite interesting, because some people want to do a weighted average across these different levels, and that also becomes a bit problematic when you say these people are more important than those people in terms of that, and rather what it works with a metric tree is about what are the constituent elements that roll up into that higher level aspect. Okay, so there's a big debate about is this a 60% and a 30% or 20%, and then you start trying to play around with a weighted average. That also causes some challenges. Okay, Heinrich?
Hi, thanks, Hardy. Yes, truly, this is very, very valuable point. Something that I wanted to ask from my perspective, this is really dependent on metrics that are measurable and something that has a measure associated with it.
Yeah. So
we can't apply it to something that doesn't have a measure to it. So if you say you've got something that you're measuring risk to a degree, but you don't have a measurement for it, right?
Yes.
And you don't know how to measure the reputational damage, then
right.
Yeah, that's kind of where you're stuck. But otherwise, it's very much focused on something that's measurable.
Yes, correct. And we are going to get to that a little bit later on, where we start understanding the type of metrics that we choose. Okay. Shane, I see your hands up. Is there another question?
Yeah, it's just around this idea of a visual roadmap. So some of the stuff I've been reading about metric trees is kind of giving this idea of being able to create a digital twin or a system map for an organization, their strategy, and visualizing it as a map based on those metrics, and the flow of it. And I just wondered if you've seen that actually happening in the real world. Is it still more of an academic idea?
I've actually seen it, and I'm fascinated by it, because I've been very fortunate to deal with Neom Health. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. I'm sure you've heard of the Neom, the line in Saudi. Shane, have you heard of Neom?
Yeah. We were talking to them a while ago. So they have 3 or 5 projects, don't they? They've got the line, and then they've got the big manufacturing plants, and then the ski resort in the middle of a desert. So yeah, familiar with it.
And so have you? I don't know if you focused and spoke to the health people. We had one of their people on the training this week. Now, I did a presentation there, and they were talking to me about their vision for health in NEOM, and they're saying they want to radically change health from being how efficient are the hospitals to be, well, more of a wellness indicator, that they don't want people in the hospital. They don't want to really build hospitals in NEOM because of the limited space, and what they recognize as well is because they're dealing with high net worth clients, they focused on longevity and living a good life and not spending time in a fancy hospital. So that's their driver. That's the one that's changing them around. And they connecting everything they do to that metric to be able to say, keep the people out of the hospital. So if we need to build fitness devices, if we need to manage their stress, if we need to see that they're headed in the wrong direction, that's what they want to pick up. And it's very much like that preventative health rather than health, the reactive health. And I remember my brother, Wayne, he worked for the Miami Dolphins and then he worked for the San Antonio Spurs. And what they were desperate to do, and you'll see the shirts that they wear, they've got all this reflective shirts. And when they come in, they do training, like they're doing bench press or something like that. If they detect that there's a reduction on the movement, on the level of movement, they pick it up and then they say something's happening. And they go into the measurement. And so each area, the different training, the different aspects that they play, the different medical departments, and that they all focused on that sort of preventative care. And of course, before they brought the people on, if they were going to sign a contract, they had to go and do all their due diligence and things like that. So it was amazing to see everybody working like this. Okay, great. Right, it looks like I'm getting through very few of my slides, but that's great. That's what I wanted to do is actually have these discussions. Okay, so Paul, this is a nice one in terms of saying, okay, I know, for example, average first contact time. I as a claims operator or someone on FNOL, or if I'm the person developing the chatbot for FNOL, I can say, well, how long is it taking for me to get all the data from the person into the FNOL data dictionary so that I can go for anomaly detection or estimation or things like that. So these are our measurements. We can help the chatbot extract all the information, do the entity resolution, do the claim amount estimation, and then create the data that's going to be used for fraudulent anomalies. Okay, so the result is a clear causal chain from the bottom to the top that knows that reducing first contact time from 48 hours to 24 hours, they can control, they will reduce the average claim settlement time, the business metric, which drives operational efficiency, which increases policy retention rate. But these things are slow, it's a case of, yeah, I can just reduce this from 48 hours to 46 hours. I can see that change, but overall claim settlement, operational efficiency, that takes a longer time to change that needle on that dashboard. And we're desperately trying to get away from those couch potato dashboards where the needle hardly ever moves. And we almost want to inverse that thing and come from the leading to the lagging. Paul, is that also making sense?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Howard. Great example, I think. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So summary, start with a North Star, decompose into your drivers and your categories and your metrics, and then start connecting quality to the lower levels, the leading indicators. Okay, that's where I want to connect my metrics. Okay, so let's just go through this quickly. Define your North Star. Okay, the single most important metric, core value. It must be lagging. It can't be leading, and it's all about the outcome that you want. So when we talk about NEOM health, it's about the wellness of the individual. It's not about the hospital episodes of care. I actually don't want to have episodes of care in NEOM health. Okay, I want to have as little as possible. Yes, we may want to do a good job when somebody comes in, but that's not really our focus. Okay. Selecting it, customer value alignment, there again is Neom Health relating to your high net worth, your high wealth people, and they just want to live longer and have as much fun for as long as possible. Okay. Revenue correlation, that helps cross-functional relevance. So is it applicable to all of the departments? So do multiple departments influence this metric? Requiring collaboration. And Rob, that talks to your point, is if I can get a metric that everybody can fight for, there's the benefits in that scenario. Long-term focus, exercise for your organization. This is what we should be doing. If we could only check one metric for the next 3 years, which one would that best indicate our success? And I remember this one really struck me in terms of we were setting up a data steward program, and we had KPIs for data owners and data stewards. And then the data stewards started complaining. It's too much of this stuff. Just a lot of noise. And the EIM head came back to me and he said, Howard, one metric. What is the one data management metric that we should use, that everybody can relate to, and that we will keep on driving this process? And I initially said, no, we can't do that. And we had arguments and stuff like that. And then I was going home on the train one day and I saw this has got to be the thing that I must focus on in terms of changing the way I set up data management programs. Okay, what's that one metric that my data stewards and that are going to focus on? And I put together a trust definition, a data trust definition, basically, or a data product trust definition. And it's all about increasing the trust, so we make our decisions promptly and well, so that we don't argue. Okay, so when we get a data set and the data set is the data asset or the data product is saying ABC, we don't argue about it saying, no, that's not the case. We want to reduce those arguments. Okay, level categories. So what are the 3 to 5 fundamental reasons a customer would choose us, stay with us, and spend more with us? So common categories for retention, customer experience, operational efficiency, for revenue growth, for marketplace platforms. Okay, these are some of the best practices that you can use. This is important. This MEAS, so many times we see that is mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. So you cannot have a leading indicator that doesn't fit into any one of these categories. Okay, otherwise you just disconnect. Now you've got the TQM right at the bottom there, that I don't know how to connect this to the higher level. Okay. All right. Level 2, what are the specific measurable outcomes within this category that have the strongest influence on the North Star? So let's look at operational efficiency. These are the big ones: straight through processing, claim settlement time, first contact resolution, and billing accuracy. And there was another one that we had spoken about in terms of saying what percentage of data is complete at the end of FNOL. Okay, so I finished my chatbot. My chatbot is there to collect the data, to populate the FNOL dictionary. What is my accuracy and my quality of the data from a completeness point of view, especially the features that are going to be used in any form of forecasting, machine learning, prediction, anything like that. We got to get that right. Okay. All right. Good characteristics of measures. It's measurable. It influences. It's ownable. Someone can take ownership of that, and it's actionable. Okay. Okay. So don't confuse outcomes with activities. The number of training sessions is an activity, and the first contact resolution is an outcome. Okay. Establish your leading indicators that are going to predict the business outcomes. So we've got our business outcomes now. What are the things we can do to ensure that we've got the right business outcomes? Okay, and this is really nice in terms of how do we evaluate our performance from last month and say this month we've got to do better. So to improve the claims SDP rate, that's lagging, leading indicators, how many F&OLs have been submitted via the digital portal. Sorry, got to go back. Okay, claims submitted with all the required documentation at first submission, average data quality score of incoming claims. Okay, so what I like about this one is we know what we need to do. We know how we need to check the effectiveness of our RAG and our chatbot in terms of that situation. And then what we also need to, the chatbot needs to be saying, but dependent on the claim, if this is a high risk claim, then I need you to submit some extra forms. Okay, depending on the claim amount. Okay, so there's all sorts of dependencies that may need the chatbot to ask for more information, and we're really trying to get as much information from that person as possible, so that when they say, okay, the job's done, we'll take it from here. We need to know that we don't have to go back and say, sorry, I now need this, or and I need to send an assessor around, or whatever it is. We've got to be able to resolve that. Okay. So the dashboard test, or how do we call it, the non-couch potato dashboard check, is if it's an indicator that the team manager would check daily or weekly to predict if they're on track to hit their quarterly key results. So is somebody looking at it and taking action and responding to it? Okay. Okay, so there's our driver tree hierarchy. I'm sure you've seen quite a few of them. Information is flowing both ways, percentages. And here's now something where we can start connecting to our total quality. Okay, so we can use this DMAC approach, and there's lean as well, but DMAC is define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Okay, so define. We want an increase in the percentage of claims with complete information from 50 to 80 within 6 months to enable higher SDP. We measure it. So now we know that 45% of incomplete claims have missing photographs. 30% have missing police reports, and this is nice to bring it down by incident type. So the cycle time is 3.2 days to collect missing information. Okay, so this is a big area that we can improve our productivity and our operational efficiency. If we don't have to, if people don't need to look at the claim and say, shucks, we're missing this, go and get that, send this email out. The person is disconnected from the chatbot, and we would want that chatbot to deal with it. Look at the root cause. Why isn't that chatbot answering and asking for that information by claim type? Customers don't understand why documents are needed, so they don't give the right information, they don't give the right photographs, and there's no real-time validation. Okay. So, how do we improve it? Redesign the F&O flow with dynamic checklists based on claim type. That's really interesting. I don't know if any of you have started to work on the conversational flow with an agent. So if you start to look at an agent and how do they drive a conversation. Very interesting in terms of trying to design that flow and working out all the different, it's a little bit like a decision tree or a flow chart. Do this, and then if that's there, go and do this. And we'll constantly be looking at those checklists, but we need to have that in a dynamic form. And this is one of the lessons I learned with agentic AI is, if you look at Copilot Studio, you can set up a conversational flow, and it takes you some time, and you say, these are all the questions that the chatbot must ask, and if it doesn't get an answer, then it must go and do that. And I'm sure you guys, when you work with the chatbot, you can see that thing when it gets stuck and it's not getting the right information. It keeps on demanding certain information from you. Okay, But if you have a dynamic flow, then you can be working through a point, and the chat, and then the conversation says, well, what about these photographs? What do I need to do here? And then you can hand it over to an agent that helps you deal with photographs for fire or accident or whatever it is, and it makes sure it gets the right number of photographs that it requires. Now, that's what Agentic is trying to do. The agents have a specification of the tasks that they can do, and they can be dynamically selected according to what the process is or what the state of the chatbot and the RAG is at that point in time. That helps us to improve these agents and allow us to add more agents to handle different conditions, and then these agents can be dynamically selected. Of course, we need the ongoing monitoring of weekly information. If the metric drops, what do we do? What's going wrong? And then you'd go through that whole conversation flow. They call it traces in the chatbot, and you'll check this one went here, but they asked that question instead of asking that. And you need a constant review of the traces and the evals that call for that thing. Okay, so there's just an example of the process, setting up all of these things. And this is what I do in an Excel spreadsheet to try to connect these two worlds together. So I've got my business performance sitting over here. Then we choose a use case, and then we choose a dimension. And within that dimension, we look at the concept, correctness of the answer, precision recall of the technique in terms of a category. Is this high risk claim? Is it low risk? Is it medium? And if we don't get the right precision and recall, we may incorrectly categorize this claim, and we may send it to the wrong people, and whatever that may be. We've also got entity resolution. So if I say I'm Howard Diesel as a member, and I don't give it enough information, and it does a lookup on entity resolution on master data, and it comes back with 20 Howard Diesels. Okay, not pleasant for the claimant, and now they've got to work out and ask more details, and we've got to try to resolve that as much as possible. We also need to resolve the policy. So do they have the right policy for this incident and this claim? Where did this claim incident happen? What were the previous claims that handed in this? And this is all part of data that needs to come in as part of the chatbot experience. Okay, then we need accurate capture. So the output data would be a transcript record. Okay, so if the claimant comes back to us at some stage and says, no, you gave me this advice and I did that, and now I see that you've rejected my claim, but that was contrary to the advice. Where do we go to prove that, yes, they did do that and we got it wrong, or no, they didn't do that and something else happened? This is considered nowadays to be a vital record, that transcript of the chatbot. And then, of course, the critical data elements. So within the transcript, we'd say, well, did we get the member right? Did we get the policy ID right? Did we get the location right? And we would validate the quality of the output. Okay, so I'm hoping you can see here that there are many aspects or many data types or many things that we need to measure to ensure that we get the accuracy right. Okay. So again, I like to have this dimension concept. I don't know how many of you work with that flow. I'm going to just try and see if I can show you that without jumping around too much. There we go. Okay. So I like to use the Wang Strong framework because it's got this difference between data quality dimensions and AI dimensions. Things like believability, reputation, relevancy, appropriate amount of data. So this is a nice framework with the different dimensions. But what we need to do is take an accuracy dimension and drill it into the concepts. Now, for data, we have an understanding of that. But for AI and chatbots and transcript records and records management, we have different concepts that we need to do. So we need to extend our concept level to these areas over here. So here you can see I've listed all of the concepts. For example, entity resolution. Did I get the right entity? Capture of the transcript. Is it an accurate measurement of exactly the conversation that the person had, or were there some hallucinations or some things that didn't go well? How do we deal with it? Okay. And maybe I should pause there. And I'm hoping that what I've been able to communicate is this relationship between the metric is guiding my selection of my use case, which is guiding then my selection of categories, dimensions, concepts, and all the way down to the rule that needs to be implemented using total quality management. Sure, there's a whole lot more that we need to go through. I maybe just to get to one area, what I do is to help us deal with AI, is have this type of thing where for any concept, I must look at the input data, I must look at the output data, and I must look at the technique. And these are the groupings of AI techniques: generation, creating new content; regression, predicting continuous values; categorization, assigning it to a risk taxonomy; classification, predicting a discrete label. This is a fraudulent claim or a non-fraudulent claim; clustering, looking at groups, ranking, and decision making. Now, I can define evals per technique. And then I don't need to worry about, is it a one class SVM or is it a whatever it is. I can pick it up in terms of this mapping. So now what I'm doing is I'm looking at all of the different AI techniques and understanding which concept will help me evaluate the effectiveness of the AI task. Any questions or comments?
Just want to say thank you. Really
Well,
cool, man.
one
I think
from me.
pretty
Howard.
interesting stuff.
Right. Thanks, Paul. Yes, Ronald.
I think pretty interesting stuff, I must say, though. I've got some questions, but I'll hold it until the end.
Okay. All right.
Howard, on my side, something that I really liked was the way you're using the strong wing.
Yes.
I think
Okay.
that is so, it's so useful, because exactly those points that you can lend into how AI would do that. The strong wing talks at a high level. When I've looked at it, does it get into a lot of detail?
No. And
Okay, so
William,
we use what we have.
I must agree with you there. And I always find that I find a dimension to be almost too high level. And if I don't drill it down to a concept, then I'm waffling around a bit, if that makes sense. Okay. So if, for example, if I look at objectivity, okay, now what is the concept that I'm working with? And if I'm looking at data, I could be talking about the bias of my data, right? So am I objective or do I have a bias? If I'm looking at a RAG or an LLM, I could be dealing with hallucination. Okay. And we can be dealing with or toxicity, right? Where I start, I don't have the right empathy. I'm not dealing with the right empathy with you. And I just said, it's your problem. You go and sort this thing out. Okay. And depending on your emotional state. So these different techniques and different things that I'm doing will bring about a different concept, or the AI technique will bring about a different concept. So LLMs will have their set of contexts. Clustering has their set. Everybody has a different set of concepts, and just this level doesn't go far enough. But it may be nice from a point of view of I'm providing a framework, but where you fit it in, that's now a little bit up to you.
It's interesting. I wonder if somebody's going to go and unpack all of that and do a nice connection of it
And that's what we're trying to do, William, is we're actually trying to, that's why I brought in this thing of being able to say, okay, from my Wang Strong categories and my dimensions, I now need a concept by the type of data. If it's a data product, if it's a record, if it's an outcome, what are the appropriate concepts for that? And then if it's an AI technique, I've got these groups, and then what are the appropriate concepts for that? So that's what I'm trying to do here is exactly that, is when I look at the next one here, which is fraud detection, what are the important concepts of measuring fraud detection? Okay. Precision, recall. So every single technique has an error rate on it, and I need to be able to bring this one back into the concept to be able to connect it to the dimension.
Yeah, 100%. Glad. Sorry, I joined late. I had something I had to sort
No
out, but
problem.
I'm really glad you're going down this route, because I think that's a gap, right?
I believe so. That's certainly something. There were two gaps for me. One is doing a data quality expectation without linking to a business metric, right? That was the big thing. I find we got disconnected and we had different discussions. And the next one was to say, well, how do I include AI quality, records quality, data quality, cybersecurity, accessibility, protection? All of those things need to come together as a complete framework for the quality of the system, not just the quality of individual elements.
I love it. I'm so glad you're doing this.
Thank you. I think Heinrich had a question. Heinrich, I'm not sure. I can't remember
I had
now.
my hand up. Thanks, Howard. Yeah, no, I'm just also, I think there's a lot to take in, right? Very valuable information that's being shared, and I can definitely see how the metrics do have I mean, for me, that's a significant driver towards being able to determine whether you're successful with your AI development projects or not.
Right.
I think one of the things that's coming up as a question, maybe it's a silly question in my mind, is that should metrics be considered the only primary driver for success of in AI projects? And if not so, then what are the other things that we also take in consideration?
Well, I want to go to this eval-driven approach. So I'm just going to, I don't know if you saw some of the presentations we did on eval. So I'm going to just try to go there quickly for you, just to show you how some of the measurements and the challenges that we have. So it's 157. Sorry. Okay, so let's have a look at agentic AI as an example. And there's been a big, how does one say, a big rejection on quality metrics for large language models, and just pure performance metrics, because sometimes what the people are saying is that, you know, I define a set of evals, which is evaluation driven. Okay, I get it into my observability platform. I then start tracing what the agents are doing and the human feedback, and I start running my evals on the traces. This is part of production, so in real time, I'm understanding how the agentic AI system is working. If I fail on my evals, I can either have a look at getting the prompt engineer to ensure that we reduce hallucination and we improve the prompting. We can fine tune some of the parameters, and we can improve the topology or the experience of the application. So what we're seeing here is there's so many different things to resolve: guardrails, preparation, prompt engineering, model routing, retraining, all sorts of stuff that we need to be paying attention to. It's not just one aspect of the system.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think, Howard, I'll try and keep it short in terms of my next question that I want to just also raise, is that at what point in time, you know, do we, I mean, for me, what's quite difficult is that if we're going to then say we need to set a certain amount of measures, right, and do a certain amount of things to determine the quality. Sometimes it causes also delays, but it's necessary because you want to do something right. You want the project to be successful based on those specific items, right?
Right.
But what would kind of be the midway approach to say, now we're ready to continue, even though we don't know everything? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because I've attended another session not too long ago where they specifically referred to removing bias out of models, right? You can't totally remove bias out of a model. It's just not, it's not possible.
They call it irreducible noise.
Yeah. And the thing is now at some point you need to get to a decision when you're going to go ahead. The long and short is that with the bias case, it's about identifying the bias and how to deal with it. In this particular case, where we're looking at specific measurables, are we saying that what is the exact point where we can say, okay, we're going to move ahead when we've got 90% of the ecosystem measurable?
Okay.
Or
all right. So this is good in terms of this talks to this. So let me go here. 148. Okay. Now, what is also important now is to understand there's different biases that are being described. There's a bias in the model in terms of the fact that it's had too little training. It doesn't understand enough, so the bias is high. Okay. When it goes when it keeps on reducing like this, what's happening is if you overtrain it, the bias becomes low, but the variance is high. Okay, so you're actually looking at many different aspects of trying to get to the point where you're at this middle point where if you hear everything you do, every bit of training reduces the error rate, but then you can start increasing the error rate. Okay, and you need to find that middle point where you've got the best accuracy on the error rates and not overfit it to learn the noise and then can't differentiate between those different aspects. So there's a lot to this in terms of underfitting. You get the high bias, the model's too simple, misses the patterns. Good fit is that balance between complexity and generalizes to the real world and the real issues and the new issues that are coming. And then other than it's overfitted, then you're memorizing noise. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's getting this area correct. And that's that total error, which is equal to the bias plus the variance plus the irreducible noise.
And then naturally, based on the metrics that you identify, when you've identified your metrics and you push it through the system, you start doing your model validation, then that's where you get to that point. So when you get to that point, that's essentially the point where you're saying that, okay, you've got the right amount of metrics. It's now good to go ahead with this project.
And what you've also got is you've got the right amount of the training error versus validation error, and this one over here. Okay, so this is not specifically related to a how does one say a situation of a specific metric. What you're trying to do is just when you start off that one metric or the error rate of either I'm producing a false positive or a false negative until I'm producing more true positive, true negative rather than false positive, false negative. So what's that error rate that I'm calling something and suggesting something, and then I'm not providing the right level of precision and F1 score, as they call it.
Thanks, Howard. Appreciate that.
Yeah, pleasure. Great.
I think, Howard, one of the things that we miss on the training is that it's an ongoing process. I mean, some people think, okay, I've trained it, that's cool, but life moves on, data changes, world changes, etc. Right? You've got to keep coming back to it and rechecking and recalibrating it, right?
I think there's two pressures here, William. The one pressure is, I think most of us are used to BI, where they ask us to build a report and we can pretty much control it. And I like the way Shane does it in terms of defining his information product. It talks about building a data product, and we can build it within a good period of time. We can reproduce it and we can stay within those time frames. When you get to this model point of view, you may think that you're going to get into deployment, but it's not getting to that level very quickly. Okay. And now you sit and spin for a while, and then you get very tempted to release it at the wrong time, and you take it back in again. Okay. And then it goes in, and then it starts to increase the error rate again. And you now have to call for it to be retrained and then resubmitted. Okay. And so how do we control this model and its constant movement? Because life happens, data drifts, model drifts, and if we're not paying attention, we don't recognize that it's drifting. But then the business people are starting to complain is, you're giving me more and more anomalies to pick up, and they're mainly false, positive or negative. And the business start to complain that we're dropping on the operational efficiency. Because
And
a
I
lot of
think
these
that's
models,
exactly, yeah, carry on.
a lot of these models have to bring in the human in the loop, and the human in the loop is when we slow down and we are challenged with that, and we just lose that connection.
100%. I think the challenge also is that there's a mindset at the financial level, the CFO level, and various other things, project management, of the old world, where we're creating something that, you know what, it's not something that has to be updated and monitored and adjusted. And we've got more of a living thing that has to be created and minded and looked after.
Yeah.
All of those costs and the repeat costs, it's not included in the ROI. It's not included in the upfront costing to say this is, because normally it's a case of I buy a system, that's fine, I'm going to write it off over 3 years. Now you've got costs that are actually high maintenance costs, right? And that's not factored into people's thinking. And then
I think there is a different approach to this, William. Remember, I spoke about that Migros Bank, that business case study on Migros Bank in Switzerland. And what they did was that they built agentic AI systems to reduce the number of call center operators. Okay, they were a zero fee for basic accounts. So they went from 0 customers in 2022 to 4.5 million customers in 24-25. And before the agentic AI, they were scaling up on people, but that killed their business model because they just couldn't afford it. So they were desperate to make that change. But what we found them doing was, or they found themselves doing it, is going from taking the call center operator out, but not retrenching them, but moving them back into human in the loop activities, constant evaluation of the trace, the evals, what was happening, what the agents were doing. And so they redeployed them and uplifted them to an extent to people that could monitor the system that living system on a daily basis, that would pick up in real time that challenges were being experienced with the model.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a new world, right? It really is a new world. I just don't think that people present in their business cases something in a way that actually allows people to recognize, you know what, there's expenses coming down the line for this, right? Don't think you build stick in and now you can walk away.
Yeah, I think the way Migros have done it is to reduce those hidden costs and still make use of the people. But you're right, it's a case of what other things come around, and we don't always know. Heinrich?
Yeah, I'm also just thinking about what's being mentioned. It's very interesting. For me, sometimes I'm just wondering whether context change of environments are being measured also in this process, because it's due to the contextual environment changing to a degree, which then brings about change and necessary change and adaptation that we need to do.
Right.
And with that, that kind of, that kind of creates the drive for these new technologies that we need to take in consideration. So if we are able to measure the context better when the context changes, we would probably be a bit better equipped with the changes coming down the line, being able to measure and adapt more.
So I think I'm understanding what you're saying, but let me see if I can replay this, and let's work in terms of examples. I think we've all heard about something called ML drift. ML drift is the fact that the real world or the context is changing, and the model is no longer suitable for that context. What does that mean? That possibly means that the ranking of our features has changed slightly, or what we've missed is we're missing a feature that we got rid of. So there's that feature reduction. What we're trying to do is reduce the features, and so they deal with that. They call it a top 20. I don't know if you've seen my presentation on achieving the top 20 features. So we do a lot of effort to remove the features, and then all of a sudden things happen, the world changes, COVID comes along, and the model's doing badly. It's the error rate is increasing. Now, one of the things we should be doing on an ongoing basis is that our data is the first place where we start looking at the shape of the data when the model was trained, in terms of all of the features, all of the elements, okay? And then the shape of the data when we start seeing the model not performing the way it was. And all of a sudden we may pick up standard deviations and means and things like that weren't the same as when we started. So we've almost got this early warning system from the data that it has, because the data typically has more features, that has more elements than the feature. And so we're picking up that another feature is come to play, is in that situation. So there's this ongoing monitoring of the feature relationships, the data, and then saying, do we need to bring more features in or get rid of features? So that's a game that we never stop playing, and we keep on looking at it to address the drift happening on the model or the data.
Most definitely, Howard. Yeah, I think that's basically it for me, right? From that perspective, I think it's if we can understand those features, that would definitely.
And of course, what we also learn in terms of big data and data science is that sometimes we don't have all the data we need. So something's going wrong with the distribution, but we don't have the data elements that are the right features. Now we've got to run around trying to find other data sets that may help us understand what's happening. And that also becomes an interesting challenge.
Howard, we're mentioning the word data a lot, right? And context a lot. This means that we're going to have a lot more metadata that we're going to need to monitor and manage all of these things, right?
I couldn't agree more. And I was actually talking to someone earlier on in our data quality program. They were talking about how do they manage the development lifecycle of AI systems, and then continually ensure, for example, lineage, right? So let's take an example with ChatGPT or LLM. When they make a decision or give you advice, one of the things we could ask them is, well, on what grounds did you make this advice? Okay, what is the groundedness of your advice? How does it relate back to which document that came from which document that came from which document? So you gave us advice. I can ask you on what grounds, what fed that advice, and now we got a lineage that starts to develop that we need in the AI system at any point in time to handle explainability and validation on whether we're getting this stuff right. That talks to these evals and traces. Where did you get what made you produce that, and things like that. So that metadata becomes very active metadata. And you need to have, any point in time, you need to be able to say, well, how did I get here? How did I get to this point?
Yeah, 100%. Tell me, how long do you think one has to retain metadata that AI? I mean, is it like the same as, well, 7 years if it was a financial decision, or 20 years if it was a decision around people? I mean, I know we haven't been down that road before.
Well, there was a case, William. There was a case. It was about 3-4 months ago, where a lady at the age of 30 challenged the bank in terms of they had used AI, and it was early days, and they used AI, and the AI system rejected her loan request for studies. Okay, and she asked them, well, please explain your decision that you made. Okay, and they couldn't explain it, and they didn't have the records in terms of what was the state of play that the machine used to make that decision, and it didn't go into human in the loop. They got caught and they got into trouble, and the judge passed sentence against them, and they were found guilty. 10 years later.
10 years later. Wow.
10 years later, she said, this is the impact. I couldn't go to university. I had to do this. I then had to study later on. And she just built this whole case, and there's no limit to that thing, right?
You know, more and more I'm seeing how people, smart people, are starting to recognize that there's a new income stream evolving here. And that is, how do I get money by penalizing companies because they're not working with their data properly? Because I can make money out of them. You know?
Well, yeah. Yeah, lawyers will always be there to find a way of finding a case to go after.
Sure. Well, we're back in the Wild West. We're just not carrying guns anymore, right?
Not sure we left, but
no, you're right. You're right.
Great.
Okay, brilliant. This has been very, very helpful and insightful.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so quality's got a lovely path. This is the diagram that I showed you in terms of just adjusting our terminology to deal with total quality, deal with the fact that, I mean, if we remember Short and Deming, they didn't come from a data point of view. They came from a manufacturing processing point of view. And their observation was the right raw materials going through the right process will produce consistent outputs or results. And I think we sort of having to go back there, because we can no longer define our raw materials just in terms of structured data. There are all sorts of other raw materials and processing issues that we have to deal with.
Fascinating. It really is fascinating. The problem is all of this costs money, right? So we have to figure out a way to put it in our use cases and in our motivations and all the rest of it. Yeah.
And we mustn't get into a situation where the PMI said 70% of AI projects fail.
Why is that actual failure? Is it multiple different reasons, or is there some common threads?
I'm not sure exactly. I haven't gone into that detail. I just validated that statistic is correct. I think a few people are saying that it's because it's not linked to business objectives and business measurement. Lots of people are saying that. So, we go and build this project, and then the business look at it and say, well, so what? What is it doing for us? So I think in some cases, we let the AI team run and just try to find something, see what you can do, see what you can find. And then when they look at it again, then it's a case of, well, this doesn't mean anything to them. And then the other day, someone shared a story with me that they had a really nice business case for this thing. And right at the end, at the death, someone said, how can we explain this to the customer or the agent? I think it was the agent. It wasn't the customer, it was the agent. And they said, they don't know, and they couldn't do it. And the project was cancelled. So they had spent 8 months building it, and then they cancelled it because of one person's question. Now, fortunately for them, that person asked the question, but surely this question should have been asked before we went into the journey.
I agree with you. You know, I overheard an interesting conversation with managers talking to each other, and the one manager made this statement. He said, "Listen, I can't influence it emotionally, and I cannot influence it in any other way that I can influence people. It will tell me, and I'm stuck with it." He says, "I'd prefer to have people."
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's different things. You know, you get things like reinforced learning, where you have a penalty for bad decisions and a positive reward for good decisions. So
Yeah.
there are things that come along, and you know, so but I think people say they don't know how to deal with it because they're unaware. I think that's it's a skill educational thing rather than. I think there's lots that they can do in terms of defining the evals, measuring the evals, observing the evals, pulling it back if it doesn't work, human feedback, human in the loop things. I think there's a lot, but we all need to know what levers we can play with to actually get what we want.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. We have to have a simplified messaging that is easy to understand, because if you just make it complex, people just go into overload and they just kick back. They can't process it, right?
Or they just let you do things and then the project fails, which is probably.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Fascinating. Thank you, Howard.
Thanks, everybody. Any other questions? Mr. Bolton, anything from your side? Observations?
Just resounding thank you, man. This is awesome.
Okay.
Having a conversation with Esty on the side because she's missing this. I'm like,
all right.
What are you
Ronald,
doing?
I think I don't know, Ronald, did you I think you were thinking of some questions. Was there anything, or did you want to talk offline?
I think the main question for me would be is just to understand now the relationship, obviously, between designing the actual DW versus actually designing the actual model based on the North Star that you've just obviously highlighted on. Obviously, again, coming back subjective to the medallion architecture. It's going to be quite interesting to determine and actually notice and see how do we actually define data quality based on the actual modeling when we utilize the North Star analogy that you've highlighted. Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be interesting.
All right. Yeah, maybe I'd look to, maybe I can have a chat with you on the side and we'll just put a use case together and see how that works out.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, looking forward to it.
It's always good when you take that thinking and you drill it down to, let me define the numbers and see how this thing all rolls up and connects.
Yes, definitely. I think because of the fact that they, especially, and I do understand when there are a lot of the different types of ideas and discussions around the BI, should I say, aspect around it. But then again, keeping in mind is that BI is, should I say, also a product of a system that we obviously need to ensure and understand that based on that system, can we actually utilize it now based on this North Star analogy?
Right. Okay. Okay. I believe we should.
Yeah. No, definitely. But thank you so much for this interesting.
And a lot of the times, those data products are there to enable decision making and insights on how the system is performing. So if we stick to that, a lot of the products are about ensuring that we see what's happening, why it's happening. Is there anything we can do to make it happen, or things like that? So.
No, definitely. I'm happy with that too also. Thanks, man.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a wonderful evening.
All right. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Howard. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Ciao.